Good evening, everyone, or good morning, or whatever time the day it is. If you're watching this Pentart video on catch up in the future, welcome to Pentart's YouTube page. My name is Gill Humphrey. I have been a creative for brand Pentart now for possibly 5 years. I never quite remember the exact date, but hey ho. I'm just going to try and sort out my so I can see and so I can share what's going on. There we are. And then hopefully whatever comments don't come up on my page, which they're generally pretty good at, will work for me. So there we are. That is my live. It's all set up on there. That's sound on that is turned off. And there we are. And it's just about 6 o'clock, which is the correct time for this to be starting. So let's just move some of this collection of stuff that I have out here, because I always have sort of a mock plan of what I'm going to do, or in my head whenever I am thinking about my lives, and then leave as much of it as possible for actually doing on the live, so that you get a tutorial on how to, that hopefully explains my process and will result in you having something that you're happy with long term. So there we are. Let's just pop that lot all safely down where I can reach it when I need it. And that's over there. Oh, little piece there. Let's just pop that over there. So I am going to use Herbarium by Stamperia as the base for my project today, because I love this collection very much. And I have a wooden box here, so it's got some depth to it, and we're going to start by measuring the inside diameter of this, and then we're going to do some painting, and we're going to do a bit of mix and matching and moving around across our products today. So this the outside diameter of this is, I think, just about 12 inches, just under 12 inches. The internal diameter, which is the piece I need to cut to start with, is 27 centimetres by about 27 centimetres. That'll leave me a little bit, but that isn't going to be a problem. So from the backgrounds pad, the single-sided one, I have chosen a very generic background, and I'm just going to chop this down to the correct size for this. So I've opted not to use rice paper tonight, because the gap that I need to fill is bigger than the size of an A4 rice paper. But so for reasons that will become obvious with the passage of time. Thank you everyone, for whoever is watching. It's much appreciated. I can see that we have got some people watching now. So let's just chop that down. The edges of this are going to be covered anyway. So, because that's what we're doing. And we're going to be making a shadow box frame using the papers, and then some of the moulded items that come with the collection, along with some Pentart paints, pastes and mediums, because it wouldn't be a Pentart live without those products. So Pentart have a large range of glues, and So I am just going to pop this down, and I do want this ultimately to be sealed in place so I can add some extra detail. So I know I said I wasn't going to use a rice paper. I actually do have the decoupage rice paper varnish and glue here, and I'm using this because it's a good glue, and I will be able to use it as to seal the paper, which means that I can add layers over the top if I want to. So that's the rationale for picking to use the decoupage glue and varnish, but using it actually as a paper glue, an ordinary paper glue, because it will work perfectly well for this purpose once I stop it soaking into my wooden base, which is not primed. I don't need to prime this today because I'm using paper, so that's clearly going to be opaque, and I can pop that in place, and I can now seal that over the top, and hopefully a layer below and a layer over the top will help stop it from bubbling, which is always good, and as it dries it will settle down. So I am aware that the decoupage glue and varnish, which is in matte, will give this a slightly opaque feel to start with, but it will dry completely clear, so that it won't matter long term that's what I'm doing. And say this will allow me to add some layers over the top of this, but also means I can remove those layers if ultimately I don't want them because things won't soak straight in to the papers. So there we are. So let's just pop this down as a layer of paper, popping it into place, and that will help pop that in, and then that can pop down onto the floor then for me to just by my fan heater for it to dry whilst we carry on. And there we are. So, and that can go in a pot of water. So I have done some painting up ahead because really you don't need me to be doing masses of painting. So in the herbarium collection there are several moulds, one of which is a collection of leaves. One contains the bottles and vases, but also a book piece and which is had. And then I've picked up some extra bits. The little birds come from the second mould in the collection, and these come from something completely different, but it is a Stamperia mould. So let's just pop over here. So as I say, there were so many pieces, I actually decided that I would pre-do some of them because really you didn't need me to be here all night. So I have taken my rapid resin and cast it using the white version, let it dry, and then I have, as ever, covered them all with primer paste gesso, and I let that dry fully. It just makes life easier. So let's just pop those over there. So we've got a collection of assorted leaves, and I've got more done. And then I've chosen to work with Pantart's acrylic paint mats, and I've got pine green, thorn green, and olive green out to give me shades of green. I can always mix them with a little bit of white if I want it maybe, and I've got some chestnut for the more woody elements of the pieces, if that makes sense. And then we'll tackle the next bit afterwards while those are drying. So let's just find a reasonably nice way. So that's all I have on here. So we're just going to paint these. We're going to give them a little bit of a mix up the way I normally paint, isn't it? You see me picking up more than one colour and then just working them into the system. I can get more out. And I was aware that I took these out a little while ago when I painted the first ones, but I didn't want to throw this paint away, so I'll get more out when I need it. And if you're going to do this messy style mixing on surface, then definitely you're better off decanting your paints into onto a whatever you want. I've just got a paper plate because they're easy for for washing. Oh, well, I can just dispose of it, and it means I don't have to worry about washing anything. But you could use a plastic plate if it, and wash it. That's just easy. Paint is definitely better off left to dry and being wrapped up rather than just allowed to be washed down a sink. It's better off going into a pot, into the recycle bin for mixed recycling, rather than actually being left to make a problem elsewhere. So we're getting a mixture of colours on here. I think, on my TV, on my computer it looks dark, but on my phone, which is, I've also got the YouTube stream playing, so I can see what's going on. It's looking nice and bright, so hopefully that will work for everyone. Pentart have only recently moved to primary screening onto YouTube because of the changes on Facebook in terms of supporting the videos. So hopefully people will eventually make it their first port of call when the Pentart lives are on. If not, then I'm sure that Pentart will rethink the whole process around lives. But for the moment, it's about carrying on and hoping that bit by bit people will transition over. So there we are. So that's the olive green. But things are all different colours, aren't they? So we don't need to have anything as a single colour in what we're doing, because that's not what nature would do for us. So let's just mix that with some of that more vintagey colour. So mix it in, soften that down, and as I say, we'll end up with a goodly mix of different toned leaves. These are quite textured in terms of these moulds, which is lovely. There we are. So let's just mix all of these in. Let's say that these have all come from the leaf mould that comes with the Stamperia Herbarium collection. There are multiple leaf moulds on the market, and these ones are one of the newer style silicone moulds from Stamperia, and the latest their iterations are slim, which means that you're using less resin, which is always a bonus because it's a relatively expensive component of my makes. And I know from comments that you can use it quite successfully with clay, and popping it in the freezer will help with popping them out because the elements are quite thin. So let's just take some of that brown, mixing it on, and just add that in, just adding a little bit of subtle shading onto there. Let's take that and we can add it onto the central vein of there, and we'll add a little bit onto the central vein in that one. We won't have that on all of them, but that's absolutely fine because, as I say, every leaf in nature will be different, which is why I never worry about being uberly worried. An artistic license is a good thing, isn't it? We don't all have to have everything identically attracted as it might be in nature, because nature is very variable in what she does. So some of these, yeah, I think, just a simple one of these, just on a card would work really nicely for a sympathy card, and just give a little bit of difference to a sympathy card. Sometimes you don't need very much, and this I think would act as a lovely focal for a sympathy card. You might think otherwise, and that's absolutely fine. But sometimes I think when you're doing things, you need something that isn't really complicated. And sometimes things are better in an understated world. Hello, Juliana. Thank you, my darling, for letting me know that you're with me this evening. I think one of the things that I find slightly uncomfortable at the moment, though I'm sure I will get used to it, around the YouTube lives, is that they feel less interactive because not so many people comment. But maybe that's just me, unless I tend not to like change very much, so I'm rather hoping that given enough time I'll just get used to it. There we are. So let's just wipe those hands. So while I've got the brown out, I've got two little birdie moulds here, so let's just give our birdies a little bit of a coat. Let's keep them simple, and I can add some colours. We'll give them all a base coat of the brown, and then we can add other things in as we want once that top layer is dry. Seems to me to be a simple solution to that. And as I say, you can bring out the detail in lots of things long term. These are cute little birds. This is a morel mushroom. I think it probably comes from one of Farrell's old collections, rather than anything else. Let's just add that into there, so the brown morel. And I'm not going to introduce a bright red into this project today, because I don't feel that that's what's needed for it overall. So let's just wriggle that into there. While those settle down and dry, I will come back in and add some extra colours into those. Having said I wasn't going to add red, I might add a bit of red into the birds. So let's just leave these to dry for the moment. So I have got a book. So let's just pick up a Decor Paint Chalky paint here, and another. Let's just see if we can find another smallish brush. There we are. And let's just paint the book, or the leaves of the book, in that nice soft creamy colour. Might paint the bottom of it because I have it out a nice dark blue. But before I do that, I'm going to take my hat and I'm going to mix some metallic paint, which is violet, because it's just such a yummy, scrumptious colour, in with a bit of black, just to dull it down a bit. There we are. We won't need masses of that. Pop that out of the way. Just We'll mix those together. So that's all I do. I've just got paper plate. I've mixed my violet metallic with some black just to make it a bit richer. And let's just paint the hat. It's got all sorts of things stuck in the band of it, and I'm not going to worry or stress too greatly about them. Now, generally, if I'm painting a metallic colour, I like to have a black gesso underneath, but I'm not worrying about that today. If I don't get nice, thick, decent complete coverage, I will add some more, another layer. But generally, this will just help, I think. There we are, just do that and that. And we can give these all a little bit of a blast before I start adding some extra details. There we are. Good. So let's just take that. I know that I want to add some colours in. And I've got dark blue here in an acrylic paint mat for the bottom of my book. Well, I will have, if there's any left in it. There we are. There is just a little bit left in there, and that can go in the bin. So let's just pop that under there. It's still a little damp. So let's just have our book cover in that nice blue. There we are. Good. Right, that can go over there. Hopefully that brown is now. That's me dangling a brush in some water, ladies. I do apologise. It sounds not so brilliant. There we are. Let's just pop a little bit of white there. Let's just add some of that into there. Excellent. Right. Right, so let's just knock off some of that, and then let's just soften the belly of our bird down a little bit. I like things when they're lateralized, and that's okay. Just going to add a little bit of definition onto there, and then just take a tiny bit of red. So this is lipstick, carmine, which is a bluey based red. Let's just most of that off, and let's just add a little bit of that into there. There we are. So we've got a little bit of a red breast going on. There we are. That will work quite nicely. Let's lid that before we have a pickle, because that's what will happen if we're not very careful. So that little lot can now go off to the side, out of harm's way, and we'll give this lot a little blast dry. Oh, she's nice. Undo that. These all over here. And these are the ones I did earlier, because why wouldn't I do them earlier? Just makes life easier. So I have some matte varnish here. I am going to be adding some distressing to these. So I'm just going to paint this matte varnish over here. If you wanted the leaves to be slightly shiny, you could quite happily pick up the shiny varnish, or the silky shiny varnish. Yeah. Well, as I say, I didn't really think you wanted me to be painting so many pieces live on air. It's always, we've got lots of steps along the way. I do have some fussy cutting to do. So at some stage, there we are. We'll add some waxes and some dry brushing, and that will work quite nicely to put everything together. And there we are. So just that everyone is well. Hopefully things are okay. No one is saying anything terrible, so no one's asking any questions, but feel free to leave messages and hopefully I can pick them up. I can see the chat. Pentart use StreamYard for streaming, which is a a good process. And just put the most bulk of that down there, and then we can put over. And then by doing this, I can also not end up with masses of clumps on stuff. Is that one dry? Yeah, that looks to be reasonably dry. Hopefully this will help. Some of this paint on these fresher ones is still slightly wet, but that's okay. I can cope with that. Let's just clean my mucky lips again so that we don't have too much of a pickle. And I'm going to swap to a clean brush, I think, when it comes to the other pieces. Let me just give this a bit better of a dry, because otherwise we'll have a problem. And we will move around too much colour. Yeah. As I say, this is one of the headaches of doing a Facebook Live, is the fact that you need to have stuff to dry as you go. But I don't, by the same token, I don't want to be keeping you from your evening for a ridiculous amount of time. But there is no short-circuiting drying time when you're doing mixed media style pieces. You just have to, if I wasn't on the live, I would just do a bit, walk away, go and have a tea, sort out the household, do whatever, and then come back to it. But not a luxury you have when you're doing a live. So there we are. Let's have some cleanish black there. Let's just pop that onto there. Oh dear, that blue was not dry. That's okay. So to speak to myself, let me just take off that worst of that and just paint some of these pieces. Yes, I've got some blue mixed in. I will give that book a better dry and then reseal it. You can always paint over something if you're unhappy and you do contaminate and start again. It's the joy of creating for yourself rather than using pre-cut pieces, isn't it? Is that you can repaint for yourself or cover over, even if I'm not necessarily going to do that on a live. Let's get this lot as dry as possible. One of the problems with force drying like this is, of course, that you tend to surface dry rather than drying from the bottom up. And when you leave things to dry naturally, as the liquid evaporates off the top, it's replaced from below, so that things dry from from the bottom up, fully through. That is always a bit of a headache when you try and speed up the drying process for things. Let's hope we can now give that a better varnish. There we are. And let's just take that, and let's take this over. And the matte varnish on the metallic is going to mattify it, which is actually the effect that I'm wanting. I didn't want it to be just a piece of the edges. There we are. There we are. So let's just pop that into there. And now I've got masses of bits on my desk, and I need to clear it all for the next bit. Let's just take some of this lot out of the way. So if you give me some steps to pop some of this stuff onto, out of harm's way, just while it all dries. Oops! And before I can move on to the next bit of the process. So let's pop that over there. Because I just need a bigger space for the next piece of what I want to do. There we go. Let's just get rid of all of that over there. Hopefully. Yeah. Aha. She says, having panicked herself and now realised where she's put the piece of paper that she actually wants out. There we are. That can go over there. Clean hands, because I'm just about to pick up a sheet of paper and I don't really want to have wet paint on it. Let's just give this a little wipe. Okay. So this again is a piece of paper from the herbarium collection. I've used the single-sided papers because we're not going to be able to see both sides of it, and I'm wanting to cut a window in this piece. So I have a nice sharp blade here, and it doesn't matter if I'm not fully accurate, but I'm just going to wriggle my way around here, taking out the background elements and keeping the parts I want to use as a frame. There we are. So I have given myself a little step, and then I can. So if you notice, what I'm doing is I've got my knife in, and I am then turning my piece, swinging my piece of paper. And this is why I like working on a glass mat, because it just allows me to move my piece as comfortably as possible. Now, you can do this on a self-healing mat. I just find it easier to do this on a mat that is on a glass cutting mat. The downside of me using a glass cutting mat for this piece is that it does mean that my blades go blunt really quite quickly. And this was a project that I knew I wanted to do as soon as I saw this piece of paper in the collection. So we're going to have a little bit of freelance imagination at this point, because we can. I could go up a little bit higher, but I'm not going to. Actually, I am going to come up here, across there, and you get that. You can cut out as much or as little of your paper then as you want by doing it this way. But you can see that what might look like being difficult to fussy cut, actually with a sharp knife, and yeah, it actually is imminently doable in really not a lot of time. There we are. Now I can feel that I've got a bit stuck there, and then this piece can be used for another project. So I'm just going to pop that back in the box with the rest of that. Okay. So let us come back to our piece that I popped into my wooden board, and I can see that this is still slightly wet, and I do want to add some extra detail into here. So let me just give this all a bit more of a dry. Whilst the going is good. Make sure it's not sticky before I pop anything else down onto it. Most of that is dry, so we'll probably get away with that now. So the plan is going to be to pop that onto the top of there. So you can see then I've got depth added. And I've got some pieces I'm going to pop into here, but I just want to add just a bit more to what's already a very busy background. I get it's already a very busy background, but hey ho, why not? Why not, you think? So I have this stencil that comes from the collection, and we're just going to add some little bits in, and I've chosen to go with some sparkly colours. So sparkling gel, which has got a shot with gold, and greenish gold metallic glamour, both of which have got mica in but are slightly different opacities. Okay, so let us just see if we can find a stencil brush in amongst all of this madness on the floor that we happen to have around us. Do I have a stencil brush? Can I see a stencil brush? I've got lots of stencil brushes. Can I see one? No. Okay, so we'll do it this way then. So I'm just going to pop some of the sparkling gel down onto the surface. We'll pop its protector in. There'll be way too much there, but hey ho. And then we're just going to we'll put some of the glamour gel next to it. You can then see that I've got two beautiful sparkly shades of green. Pop the lid on that one, pop that over there. And this is a busy stencil, and I don't necessarily want all of the pieces, so I am going to be slightly picky with what I pick out, because I can be. Now if you're paranoid about these things, you could, I haven't gone up high enough there, you could quite happily mask off what you don't want, but that's okay. Doesn't have to be perfect. And of course you could pick out lots of different colours for your pieces. You don't have to have it. And the joy of a stencil means that I can overlay this as I want to. I don't have to be confined to what a stencil looks like, which is also really quite nice. And some of that will get lost because it'll get covered, but it's just nice to have some of the different things that we've got. There's a different flower shape there, So let's just pop that onto there. I'm not going to worry too greatly about things. I'm just adding different layers, different bits of texture with these different shades of green onto my piece. And are we getting a bit of a pickle? Yeah, because some of it's going through, but in the grand scheme it's really not going to matter too greatly. We're just building up a background collage here that will helpfully just give the eyes somewhere extra to rest long term. And I appreciate that that looks like it's quite difficult to see. So if I lift that up, you can see all of that shimmer that I've added in as I've used my brush to do that. And before I make a mess, I'm going to be wasteful, but just clean that up. But I've now got a flat layer there, so I can sit down to dry. Hopefully some of these pieces are now reasonably dry. Right. Excellent. So I want to add some extra shading into these pieces. So I have the light rust and umber pieces, the Sirs, which I'm going to use almost as antiquing gel. So let me just take the light rust. There we are. And we'll do the bits that I definitely want to add the light rust to help. So I don't want my book pages to look quite so clean and fresh, because they're not going to be clean and fresh, are they, if they're in a garden? So I can pop that on, and then I can just wipe that back so that the Sir is sitting, highlighting those pages in a very organic way. And we're going to do the same for our toadstools. There we are. Just take a little bit more of that. Oh, didn't want that on. There we are. Take as much or as little off as you want. When that's dry, I'm going to add a little bit of dry brushing onto those. So now I'm going to be really naughty, and I'm going to mix and match, and I'm just going to soften these down a bit because I can. Just going to help bring out the depth, make these look a little less clean. There we are. Because sometimes that is good, isn't it? There we are, that's better. They just look, by the time you're adding the extra layers and detail into it, it just makes such a big difference to the pieces. And I've chosen to go with the umber for the leaves because most leaves have a degree of brown in them, rather than anything else. There we are. It just adds. So this is a permanent surface once it has dried. So we're not going to see me painting the whole lot all together. Let's just mix it up a little bit. We don't have to have them all quite the same shade. The green's not all the same shade, is it? So that's okay. We can do that. So we can add a different shade into some of these pieces. and it will add a degree of lightness to the piece. But if we have it all in that dark brown, everything will look quite dark. Whereas using that rust, I could use ochre, that's the other colour that would also work. But I think that is going to do its job quite nicely. You can, yeah, so I've used a variety of products. I've crossed the boundaries between the wall decor products, the pen art products, in this make, but that's again the joy of being creative. If you could use the antiquing gels from the pen art range as opposed to the wall decor range for a very similar effect to this. So yeah, don't be put off by the fact that I've got all of the different products. You can, there are plenty of alternatives out there. So then there we go. So I think that's quite helpful because I can use that to show you the difference in the two on the same leaf. Let me just clean my hands and have another one of that. So if I just pop this up to the camera, that has got the light rust on it, and that has the umber. So they do definitely have a different feel depending on the colour that you've chosen to work with. And of course, there's nothing wrong, as I did last week, with you actually mixing them up if that's what you want to do. There we are. Or adding wax, or doing all sorts to it really. But it wouldn't be a make of mine if I didn't have. I've just got so much on that. That's why and I can be reasonably quick about this, not let it dry too much. I know I said that I don't let it dry, because once it's dried, it's permanent. And I definitely want green leaves, not brown leaves. You'll get a feel for how long you can leave things on. Really, what I'm wanting is this to sit in the crevices of the piece, not in the in the nooks and the crannies, rather than on the surface. So there we are. So we've then got a mix of different pieces. There we are. There we are. So let's clear that lot away, and then we can get to assembling our piece. I just need some room on the desk for all of my the bits and pieces that I've got. Let's just really give my hand a jolly good wipe before we contaminate everything. There we are. So let's before we do that, let's just take some of that gold wax here and add that onto there we are, onto there. And the top of the pages can also be gold. There we are. Let's just give our little birdie's beaks a little bit of gold, a little bit of shimmer. There we are. It never fails to amaze me just how much extra detail you get with just a little bit of wax over the top. There we are. Okay, so let's wipe that off my fingers, and then let's just pop this lot over to the side temporarily because it's still wet whilst that antique ink there, yeah, that dries. Let's get that off the back of there, pop that there. Right, let's just have a bit of room in the space. Okay, pop that over there, tuck that there. Right, let's hope that the hands don't get too mucky. So there is our piece there, and here is our frame that is going to go over onto there. And this is paper onto wood, so I am going to use the Pentart Express glue for this. Now, I did check that this was working ahead of going live, and miraculously it is. It will grab quite quickly. It doesn't have to be a perfect full wear, but I do need enough for it to stick properly. There we are. Let's just make sure we've got enough on the edges. Okay. So this is a really good all-purpose glue. It has a very quick grab, so it's totally worth having in your stash. And I can pop that down. And if you just needs to be left to grab undisturbed for about 30 seconds, and it will work quite nicely for me. There we are. Let's just let that grab down there. And I can trim off post live the bit I don't want, okay? Or I can leave it on because actually no one is going to be any the wiser if I don't take it off. Oh, so let's grab our next piece of here. So I've got lots of different pieces here, and the focal image I want in here is this house, and this is an die cut ephemera piece. They're dry, and I want it slightly raised up. So to do that, I am going to use my good old favourites, my canvas stretchers. I could just as easily be using cardboard from whatever postage packs I've got left lying around. So let's go back to that express glue. Pop that into there, and there's quite a depth, so I'm actually going to add another, and I could use heavy body gel for this, but paper onto paper really doesn't need heavy body gel. It should work perfectly well with the express glue, and that's why it's good to have a mixture of different products in your armamentarium, isn't it? So our little house is going to go just tucked off to that side, and then we're going to start, we're going to build a scene from there. So I want my lantern to appear like it might be hanging. It won't be hanging, but we can appear like it might be hanging. So let's just pop that onto there. I'll stick that one onto there, hanging from underneath. There we are. So it's coming from underneath there. Okay, so now I want to build a little bit of a scene around here, in, under, over, on top, that's what we're going to do. Okay. So I'm going to tuck these into place in the way that you've seen me do before, just auditioning the pieces that I have. So I'm going to pop that onto there. I know that I want my book to be tucked down here, but I want some extra other pieces, so that piece can tuck into there. Yeah, and if I don't glue all of these down tonight, then I will. And I will use heavy body gel, for this is yucky underneath. I don't want to put that on my piece until it's drier than it is. So I'm going to pop that piece there. I want that to be there, so I'm not just move that down a little bit. So what have we got? We've got another piece here. Okay, so we've got a little cluster of pieces here. I'm going to pop that down there, and then we're going to start popping some of these other bits in to place, so that we've got a little bit of a seam and our pieces interlocking and lacing together. It can go under there. Okay, so I'm going to start popping some of this stuff in. I've got a sort of idea now where I'm going. I've got some more pieces to put in, and I'm also going to add in some natural elements into this. So let me just grab my natural elements, which is some moss basically. But I can start to build my scene together, and that's the whole purpose of all of this. So let me just pop this in. So this is, I can pop that into there. Don't necessarily want the big globules hanging out. There we are. So that can be sitting on there quite like that. I'm going to, I know where I want that piece. I'm very happy with that piece tucked underneath there in front of that, so that can sit onto there. And I'll just clear that white off there. Now I'm going to pop, horror of horrors, a pile of heavy body gel into here for reasons that will become clear. So we're now going to just stick some of this moss into place. It's going to almost ground some of these pieces. You can tuck it under, over, in, out. Pop some extra bits underneath there. I've got different, this is a bag of mixed moss, so I don't have to have it all in the same colour or even the same texture. Okay, and I can add more as I want to as I go. So this piece I'm now going to tuck under there with a bit more moss underneath it. Okay, she says, don't really want to have a mess there, but we're going to have a mess at this rate, aren't we? There we are. Okay. So I now need a blob of that there. That can sit there, and I can take some of this moss and I'm just going to shove it underneath. It's going to help prop that up. Yeah, I will grab a wet brush. I'm just going to mop up some of that white. Okay. Pop that into there. Now, she says we've got some extra pieces left Where's my other bird gone? Well, there's my other bird gone. Okay, okay. Let's just turn you around. And I've got some bits over here. So I'm wanting to have a little creature. So this is a die cut chipboard. So that piece can sit there in front of there. Okay. That can go there. We can now pop that there. So all I'm doing now is lifting my layers up. It can go onto there. That can go there. And we'll have a clean up of the mess. So we don't have white long term. So we've got a little hedgehog sitting in our garden. Now then, I also know, where's it gone? Okay, so they're in place. So let's just take this now and add some of this into place. Also, okay, pop that over there, pop that there. And then let's just grab some of that heavy body gel. And the heavy body gel I can use to build depth. And we're going to pop our little hat there for the time being. Okay. So I want a tree behind there. And my little yeah. I can sit on there. And I've got another that can sit just tucked into there. So we've got some extra bits of greenery. So let's just tuck another piece of that. So a bit clean up, a little bit better than that. That can go into that. I've just dropped something on the floor, but hey ho. We'll add an extra bit there. And you can carry on and add more or less of these as you really want to. Ultimately, it's up to you where you see it going. So I've got from the junk journal pad a little squirrel, and because I can, I'm just going to tuck my little squirrel into there as if he's found the hat abandoned in the garden. So what else have we got lurking apart from mucky mitts? I'm going to add, I think, just going to take some of this and I'm going to build this down into here so it's not quite such a sharp edge between the pieces. There we are, as if my fence is coming down. And I'm going to pop that there so my little hedgehog is actually sitting on something. Yeah, I think that works. And then it's about playing. So from the die cut bundle, we have these leaf pieces. These actually all come from the junk journal. and these are slightly more problematic, but hey ho. So let's just add an extra bit of greenery coming down. Come on, there we are. So I'm helping to blend that cut edge with my die cut pieces. Bearing in mind, I've already done several pieces with this collection for other samples. So we're going to add another piece there. And we'll add another piece into there. Just breaking up that cut line a little bit. Okay, I've got some words. Okay. Follow your path seems like an apt word to me. So we're going to pop that up onto there. Because to me, pieces need a title. What else have we got? In that collection, there are some florals. So let's just tuck a little floral into there. We've got another floral piece here. So I'm going to tuck that there with my little piece. And we've got some mushroomy pieces. These are all in the junk journal collection. So that can go there. I think there is a second one of those lurking somewhere because they don't appear in singularly, do they? So there we are. Let's just pop a second one into there. There are some little floral pieces, not many in the chipboard collection. So I'm going to pop some of those in because I've got them. And again, it's going to help break that edge up for me. There we are. I've got a little fox. Where do I want my little fox? And I'm going to put my little fox tucked in there and I will re-stick that leaf. So the joy of the junk journal, of the gel medium means that I can tuck stuff in, out, under, around. I've got 2 flowers, so I don't need that, but I'm going to pop a little butterfly onto those. I'm not too sure I want an extra set of words. Do I want an extra set of words? Do I want an extra set of words? I'm going to pop out a set of words. The quiet of nature down there. Just seems like the right place to pop it. Got some more leaves from the junk journal collection, so that can go into there. There's another set of leaves from the junk journal collection. I'm going to tuck that into that. There we are. Go on in and stay in place. There we are. Are we happy? Well, I think probably. Reasonably happy. I don't want that. Do I want an extra? I tend to like words in sets of 3, so pure happiness is going to sit there because it can. So I've got 3 sets of words. So let's just sprinkle a few tonal flowers into place because I think that's what I want to do. I think I've used all of the pieces that I've prepped, apart from the one that fell on the floor. And I can carry on. I could add some more moss and stuff if I want to. I might just add a little bit there. I know I've got that there, so I'll pop that into that. It's going to help just ground that book. So let's find a pair of scissors. There we are, ladies. And So we can get paper flowers from lots of places. I think Pentart actually sell this type, making it really easy. And there we are. Let's just tuck in some extra pop some of that there. Oh, take rid of that. Pop that out of the way. And of course, off live, I can do what I normally do, which is then fiddle faddle around and add all sorts of bits in, because that's what I do. There we are. Check that underneath there, so it's just poking in and out. And this is about how you want your piece to look. There isn't a right, there isn't a wrong. It's very much about what feels correct to you. There we are. We'll tuck that into there. Let's just stick a third white one in. I want that. Let's tuck it into there, under and over. I'm a little empty in terms of florals over there, so let's just grab a bit of that. Just stick one of those into there. It's going to help balance things through. There we are. There we are. Might just need a lot more of that, because why not? That can tuck underneath. Okay. So we very much have now a little scene tucked in place. There we are, she says. There we are. A magical winter scene, garden scene, all made with the Herbarium collection. Mixed media shadow box without using a canvas, but using a wood piece. We've added some stenciling, we've added our antiquing, our distressing, we've introduced you to our express glue and some of our sparkling metallic range of paints, pastes and mediums. So ladies and gentlemen, that completes our make for tonight. I hope you found it interesting and useful, and I will see you on my live next week. Please take care, and remember to post any of your makes on Pentart Decor so we can see them. Bye.